Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. We are right on time, 11 sharp. While we wait for the audience to tune in, I'll share how this webinar is going to be structured and organized. I'm super excited about this one because we have great speakers in the audience. So first we're gonna start with making a round of introductions with our amazing speakers, which are two incredible professionals I had the chance to work with have been or are still included in marketplaces that need to handle and process a lot of data and challenges to manage supply and demand. And of course, while doing all of this, they also need to continuously work on making sure there is growth. And both of the speakers we have here today have managed to impact cost cutting on one hand and efficiency but also revenue growth by implementing artificial intelligence, which I believe it's super exciting and valuable for everyone to hear and learn from. Because you hear about artificial intelligence a lot, it's like a buzzword, but it still kind of feels like it's not very clear how it can help me, how it can help my work and the business I'm working at. So please stay tuned because there's a lot to learn. And then secondly, what I will also try to do at this webinar is explain at a very high level what is AI in general. And I will also briefly explain two subfields, generative AI and computer vision AI, which are very important and they will have a large impact on fashion and e-commerce as we know it. And I will also give example how these fields can be used for the product data enrichment space, which is directly connected to what our speakers today have implemented in the marketplaces they work in. And thirdly, we will go into a discussion with our guests, mostly around the marketplace management. How do marketplaces cultivate both the supply and demand aspects of the business? What are the processes implemented? And what are the biggest challenges they face? Then we're going to talk about the product and image data. How do these marketplaces handle product data and image quality for the e-commerce sites in case when fashion items are uploaded by individual consumers for consumer to consumer marketplaces or taken in-house. So it's great that we will hear two different types of speakers today with different backgrounds of marketplace types and also with different experience. Then we're also going to talk with our speakers about AI involvement. What was their involvement into integrating AI in their business? What was the process they went through to evaluate its impact and return of investment? And at the end, we're going to talk about marketplace growth. How can you implement AI that will directly impact on growing revenue and sales? So this webinar will be organized as a discussion. If you have any questions in the meanwhile while you're listening to us talking and the speakers, please post them in the comment section. And we have an amazing team behind the scenes. They will ping us to answer. So I see the audience is already tuning in, so I think we can already kick off. So let me start by introducing myself so that you know who your host for today is. I'm Svetlana. I'm the founder and CEO of Pixel.ai. I have a PhD in artificial intelligence and computer vision from the University of Amsterdam. Graduated 2016. Started working on the idea of implementing artificial intelligence in the fashion industry in 2017. In a way, I wanted to combine my experience and knowledge in AI with my passion for fashion because I'm guilty of being a passionate online shopper myself. And I was directly frustrated of the fact that it takes me so much time to find what I like to buy. So basically, Pixel was born out of my own personal frustration as a consumer, having very tiresome customer journey. So in 2018, Pixel was officially founded. We first started with sustainable fashion and then expanded to all types of e-commerce businesses and marketplaces. So sustainability and circular fashion are very close to my heart. That's why I'm so super excited about the webinar we're going to have today. Maybe I can tell you a bit more also about Pixel. Pixel is an AI platform for data enrichment for e-commerce businesses. we primarily solve the pain point of poor and incomplete product data for brands, retailers, and marketplaces, whether having to input the data manually in-house or via direct sellers. And we can also generate descriptive attributes of tags for products, but also different types of titles and descriptions. So this was briefly about me and Pixel. I would like to move now to our speakers. So let's move on to Alvaro. Maybe we can start with you. Welcome, Alvaro. Can you please tell us more about your background and your involvement with e-commerce marketplaces?
Yeah, certainly. Hey, everybody. Really excited to be here to share some of my learnings throughout the past few years. So, my name is Alvaro Bolivar. I'm currently the CEO of a company called Cosmos. It's a completely different space. We're basically trying to develop new technology and immersive experiences for the internet. But I've been in the tech industry for about 20 years. Specifically, I work for about 10 years at eBay. I started as a data scientist when data scientist wasn't really a job at the time. But grew into product management, and after that, I worked on many other tech companies, including startups and large companies like Facebook and eBay. Sorry, and Yahoo and Verizon. Last few years, I spent 2.5 years at Depop, where I was in charge of the whole buyer experience, which brought me together with Pixel to explore how we could actually use AI to improve the buyer and seller experience at Depop. Then we got acquired by Etsy. At Meta, I wasn't really in charge. I wasn't really involved directly with their Facebook marketplace, but I got a lot of insights into how they operate. Obviously, a lot of the information that I'll be able to share is restricted in some ways to what's publicly available. But really excited to be here.
Thanks, Alvaro. Really happy to have you here. You have an impressive background, and I believe you have a lot of experiences and stories to share. But yeah, we won't be able to cover everything. But yeah, we are excited to hear your experience directly with marketplaces and the AI involvement with what have you been integrating. Thanks. So now I would also ask Johnny to introduce himself. Welcome. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about yourself and your background.
Yeah, sure. Morning, everyone. So we run thrifted.com, which is one of the kind of larger online retailers of vintage clothing in the UK. We sell a mix of kind of branded sportswear, workwear, Levi's, designer stuff, sort of Versace, Armani, that sort of thing. We typically buy from overseas, so from Asia and Europe. We buy sort of mixed second-hand clothing. And I guess in a sentence, we buy kind of mixed second-hand clothing and we take it all the way to marketplace. So we launder it, we photograph it, and we digitize it. So we create a digital listing of second-hand items on our various channels. So largely thrifted.com and eBay. We've been running a number of years, sort of 4 or 5 years, and have started to work with Pixely in the last year just to sort of automate that digitizing process.
Yeah, great. That's amazing. Thanks, Johnny. So welcome. Super excited to hear also what you have to share with us and the audience. So as I said at the beginning, before we kick off with the questions and the discussion with our guests, I will want to kick off with a quick overview of what is artificial intelligence and briefly explain its two subfields: computer vision and generative AI. So for all of you in the audience who are not that technical, I really want you to think of artificial intelligence as a really smart helper that learns from the information that is given, kind of like how you teach a child new things. Artificial intelligence learns from data. It's a computer program in a sense that can do things like recognizing faces in photos, understanding what you say, or even drive cars in the past few years. So it learns a lot from the data it gets, just like you learn from your experience. So that's why I said the more experience you have, the more you know. And it's the same with AI. If it's trained on more data, it will know more. So that's why we see now amazing knowledge and sense coming from ChatGPT. I believe most of you have tried it. And all this knowledge is basically because it has been learning from the whole internet data. And I would say that currently the state of artificial intelligence that we are in, it's a perfect one, because we are, as humans, we are in the pilot seat, and we are having a clever AI friend next to us that can help us with a lot of tasks and just make our life and our work easier. So I think it's a very pivotal moment in the world of artificial intelligence now, and everybody that hasn't started using it, it should start as soon as possible. And besides artificial intelligence as a big and umbrella term, there are a lot of subfields within, and I would like to briefly explain what is computer vision as a subfield. And you can look at computer vision as giving eyes to a computer. So it can help the computer see and understand pictures and videos just like we do. So if you show a photo to a computer vision AI, it can recognize objects like is there a cat or a car, or it just like teaching a computer to see the world like we do, which is pretty amazing. And I will give you an example. For example, at Pixel, we use computer vision artificial intelligence to process an image and tell you is there an dress in an image, what color is the dress, is it long or short, what is the style, is it casual or elegant, and what occasions can you wear it with. So it's just making the computer understand fashion and images like we do. And then the second subfield that I want to touch upon today, although there are many about artificial intelligence, is generative AI. So you've been hearing a lot about generative AI. Some of you have maybe even tried it. And how we can look at generative AI is like an artist who can create new things like pictures, music, and even write stories on its own. It has learned from a lot of examples. And just like us, we have seen photos. And when we started learning how to draw, we've been looking at pictures and examples. And for example, I want to mention, like, because most of our audience are in the fashion industry, how can generative AI be used? It can help with product design, it can help with image editing, and at Pixel specifically, we use generative AI for generating content for product detail pages, like the titles, descriptions, and all of this is based on the attributes that a product has. So this was just a short overview. Now I would like to give the floor and to our speakers, and I would like to ask Johnny the first question. So Johnny, you mentioned a bit about what is thrifted. Can you tell us a bit more, like how do you balance supply and demand aspects of your marketplace, and how are you creating a thriving community around it?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, we're a vintage retailer. We're buying a lot of stock overseas. We buy kind of mix grade secondhand clothing from, and this is just to kind of explain our sort of supply chain and supply process. We buy kind of mixed secondhand clothing from grading factories. So if you don't know, a grading factory is basically a sorting house, sometimes referred to as a rag house. They sort clothing donations largely from sort of Western Europe and USA. Um, so they will sort it into different grades according to what the item is, whether it's a summer item, whether it's a winter item, whether it's branded, whether it's fit for resale. So if it's stained or torn or any of those things. So typically they're buying this donation grade from countries like the US, UK, France, Germany, what have you. They will then buy it to sort it to export it to Africa. So the way we get involved is we work with these factories and we provide kind of catalogs and specific criteria on what we need. So we'll buy Levi's 501 or Levi's 505. and the guys will be pulling that out of the mixes that they sort through for Africa. Um, so yeah, so once we've sort of gone through that process, we bring it to the UK and we sort of process it at our sort of warehouse in the UK. I'm not too sure what else I can add for that really. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think that just by doing this, it's really amazing. You're making to give a second life to the clothes, and help people buy in the let's say in the secondhand market, because otherwise it's very difficult to get to the products you like. So I think that's pretty amazing. So you're putting it out there, and there are obviously amazing pieces of clothing that you're selling, and they really deserve a second chance. So I think that's really
Yeah,
great.
exactly. We work very much on a sort of trend basis, that we're trying to find stuff that fits the sort of UK consumer and the UK market. So we work closely with these factories, and we give them updates every month, every couple of weeks, on what brands to look for, what styles to look for. So, for example, I think Beyonce released a new song or video recently where there's a lot of sort of Western style clothing, so sort of fringe and suede sort of Western jackets. So we're seeing a lot more demand and search demand for that, both on our website and on eBay. So we go and reach out to the factories and we say, look, can you supply more of this stuff? And they'll begin to pick it out of these donations. It doesn't come immediately. It's not like manufacturing where you can just dial up your
Yeah,
machines and produce the stuff. You have to train the staff on the ground to pick the various items that you need. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, that's great to hear. So basically, it's not that fast as fast fashion, but they indeed get to the end consumers, and from boxes you manage to put it in front on e-commerce stores, and for people to buy from you instead of fast fashion. So I think
Yeah.
just the whole process that you're making with the circularities is just amazing. And then people buy less fast fashion, and just it's just amazing. So I thank you for doing that, Johnny. And the next question that I want to pose is like you're getting a lot of let's say supply with the companies that you're been working with, and what we've noticed with some of our clients that we're working with, because the process of adding all these new products to online stores is super time consuming. It's not that easy as you mentioned it, but it's not only getting the products in, but also taking photos, adding data like the attributes or the category, which is all taking time. And what we have seen is that a lot of our clients would add only the basic attributes, like for example the category and the color, but a lot of the details you mentioned, like fridge, are super important for finding the products that you have in mind. Because if you don't have that attribute associated with the clothing, then your consumers, they're searching but they won't be able to find it. So I'm wondering, like, how do you handle this data and the process of getting the products in until you post them on Thrifted, and you also mentioned eBay.
Yeah. So I guess overview of our sort of warehouse process, and then maybe a little bit of overview of how AI has helped. Um, So obviously, once the stuff arrives from our suppliers, we'll typically sort it in house. So we'll check for damage. We'll remove kids' clothing, for example. We'll then launder it in house. So we use sort of various biochemicals to make sure that there's kind of no issue further down the line once we sell the stuff. But we launder and dry the stuff in house. We iron it. We photograph it using flat lay LED systems. After that, we then list it. Our sort of old method was using Excel spreadsheets, so kind of smart spreadsheets, effectively. Um, with that method, we can only really put in about 10 data points. So by data points, I mean size, color, brand, uh, gene length, those sort of basic requirements for selling online for that product. Um, so I began looking last year at sort of various bits of AI and came across Pixely, and we were able to add kind of about sort of 20 to 30 total data points. So we've more than doubled, and for some types of category, more than tripled the amount of data that we provide per product, which is obviously pretty awesome in terms of search quality and filtering ability, both on our website and indeed on the various marketplaces like eBay. So
Yeah.
that's sort of the power of AI in terms of our sort of listing process.
Yeah, amazing. Can you mention quickly like what are the requirements of having to sell on eBay for those that are maybe considering this?
Yeah, sure. So we were kind of fortunate enough last year to work on the eBay Pro Seller program, and that gave us kind of a good overview of what's required to boost your listings and do better on marketplaces and on eBay, obviously. Um, Largely comes down to number of images. So they recommend more than 8 images. If you can do 16, that helps, or helps more rather. And obviously filling in as much data as possible. So more
Yeah,
images, more data. Super simple, and that sort of ties into the eBay SEO, not just what people are searching in terms of like long tail search, but
yeah,
also where eBay puts you in that search. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, amazing. So, just to understand like the difficulty of the process, and can you share with us like how many people are basically working on this whole process at Thrifted?
So we sort of yo-yo around between sort of 10 and 30 people, depending on the time of year,
Yeah,
with various different people working at different stations. So that sort of pre-listing stage where we've got a number of people doing the laundry, and then we can have up to sort of 5 people doing the photography part, and then typically between sort of two and 5 people are doing the listing. Um,
yeah,
we've been able to sort of reassign people into different areas because we've used AI to help with the listing process. It used to be that the listing and digitization element of getting items online, uh, that was the bulk time spent by our sort of operators, as it were. But we've managed to reduce that in terms of the total time it takes to get an item online using the AI software.
yeah, yeah. Great. Thanks for sharing that with the audience, Johnny. So maybe we can move now to Alvaro and start a discussion with him. So Alvaro, you have worked in a different type of marketplaces, which are more direct consumer to consumer. You mentioned eBay. You worked at Depop in the last 2.5 years, and also with Meta. Can you please tell us more about the challenges and the processes there, and how did you manage supply and demand?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, the way the marketplaces typically think about this is basically a matching problem, because even though we have teams that manage kind of the try to drive and alter the demand from traffic drivers and marketing campaigns, and then also will try to kind of modify and drive supply through seller programs like eBay does and Depot also does. uh, it's sometimes very hard to move the needle. So the bulk of your business is about matching the organic supply and demand that you have. And from a supply and demand problem on the buyer side, uh, the key issue is that in many ways we have trained users to not express really what they're looking for. Uh, for instance, 90% of searches on Depot or eBay or actually any search engine is no more than 1 or 2 words, sometimes 3. and that creates a problem because people are kind of trained that when they type too many words, they basically get zero results. Uh, Same on the seller side, the challenges are more about uh, fundamentally time. Like people just don't bother. Uh, Sometimes I think about my wife, right? Like she has like a whole closet full of things, but for her it's just potentially easier to just take what she's not using and put it and have it drop it off at the charity store so that then people like Johnny can make a business out of it. uh, but for consumer to consumer businesses, it's very hard uh, to convince and to drive casual sellers. And this is not a secret. For instance, both the largest growth that Depop saw in their whole history, growing over 100% year over year, was actually during the pandemic, simply because people were at home and and they didn't want to. Yeah, the obviously some of them lost their paychecks. A lot of them were young people. So if you look at the 90% of the users at Depop are 30 years or younger, um, and there was a fundamental need and time to actually try to generate some money from the kind of bank account of clothes that they had in their closet. So that sparked that growth, and at the time we were lucky to have a very scalable architecture and a very scalable product. But it was very challenging at the same time to keep up. It was very interesting times. But yeah, I mean, the way we think about it is a matching problem. How do we actually match the, the organic supply and the organic demand available? How to make those processes easier and easier for the seller in terms of the time it takes to list an item, or the things that are required to list an item, and the time it takes for a buyer to find what they're looking for, or potentially, use recommendation algorithms and machine learning algorithms to actually make that experience better.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thanks, Alvaro. So this is super interesting. Can you please share, like, in your experience working with these large marketplaces, what have you seen as challenges and pain points for the sellers on the platform, and what is yeah, and then next to it, what is the impact of the sellers' behavior on the marketplaces directly?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the with respect to the to, I mean, I go back to the buyer experience, and maybe I'll inject how we potentially start using AI into the discussion. Um, on the seller side, again, people just don't have the time, and if you make the selling flow complicated, especially for casual sellers, people just don't bother and they just don't want to do it. I think Johnny kind of solves that problem because he's fundamentally building as a business, and kind of uh, not only identify what is most likely to sell, but also has a whole team that can actually is incentivized to kind of put those items up for sale. Uh, so if you think about it, the same challenges that Johnny has with respect to listing the items is the same challenge that a casual seller will have to do that. And for instance, in the way we started using AI at Depot was to basically use product like yours. We actually initially started building our own technology, uh, but it was time consuming, and I think people think the evolution of AI. I mean, the evolution of AI is a whole different discussion here, because I think what was available 2 years ago is very different than what's available now. Uh, and I think there's a large incentive for potentially large companies to try to build their technology in house. But at the time, it was very time consuming, very complicated, and if you don't have a large engineering team, it's potentially easier to just partner with companies like yourself to develop these integrations. And I think that data tagging is the most simplest example where when people list on Depop, they just write three sentences, and sometimes they forget very basic things like the color. And uh, when you look at query data, uh, I believe it's like almost half of the searches contain a color. So if you don't add a color in your search, then if you're in your item, your item is basically invisible to half of the traffic. Um, uh, on the buyer side, is as I said explained earlier, it's more of a behavior thing where you're effectively trained not to type too many long queries because you know that you're going to lose of the inventory. You end up with no with an empty page. I think this is going to change over time as we get used to using tools like ChatGPT, where it's completely the opposite. The more you type, the better the algorithm can do to actually give you a better answer.
Yeah. That's exactly true. We see this behavior with also with other consumer to consumer marketplaces that basically sellers don't input enough data, and and sometimes the seller's data is even inaccurate. It's also very subjective. Like what you consider pink, somebody considers a bit different shade of pink or orange. So it's very subjective. And I was wondering, like in your experience and seeing these data inconsistencies coming from sellers, like how is this affecting the marketplace afterwards once the let's say the items are listed?
Yeah, I mean, we look at we look at many metrics, sell-through rate, and we, for instance, try to build cohorts of of uh, of seller types. For instance, large sellers and professional sellers versus
Yeah.
kind of casual sellers, and we see that even though the casual sellers potentially has a much higher long-term value, it's the type of seller that we find that it's much harder to retain because you only get one chance
Yeah.
in the sense that if somebody goes and I'm going to try Depop, I'm going to try eBay, or I'm going to put this in Facebook Marketplace, if they don't succeed in the first try, the likelihood they're going to try again is really really low. uh, so yeah, we spend a lot of time trying to kind of figure out how we can actually satisfy casual sellers and try to make their life easier and easier. um,
Yeah.
and not having the data, not having the items tagged with the appropriate data has tremendous implications in the buyer experience, not just from a search perspective, which is how most items get found. 80% of items sold on Depop or any marketplace for that matter actually found through search. So if you don't have the data to do the matching, you're basically losing 80% of the demand for your items. Um, but even to be able to build great recommendation algorithms, the more data you have to make those inferences about, okay, if you like this, then you like that, it's very hard to implement those algorithms if the actual items are not tagged with the appropriate data. Uh, and And yeah, obviously there's other aspects associated. I mean, we're only talking about data, but the price is another piece of data that is really important. Where sometimes people actually find what they're looking for, but it's not the right price. Or condition and price, besides the scripted aspects of the item, are potentially the top two most important things that in market that drive marketplace success, which is are the even if it's the right item that I'm looking for, is it the right price? And I can find it cheaper just going across the street or going to the mall. Or in terms of not price, but also value. Uh, and the condition of the item. 'Cause sometimes, people they don't even bother to, to kind of enter the right information on the condition of the item. Size is potentially another huge challenge that we face. Um, but yeah, if I have to say, yeah, on the buyer experience, like having items tagged with the proper data is fundamental
Yeah.
to the buyer experience.
Yeah. Thanks. Great for sharing, Alvaro. So basically, in this type of marketplaces that you mentioned, like Depop, eBay, basically you have two challenges. One is on the seller side and making things super, super easy, and then on the search and let's say the sell side. Because if the data is not there and if it's not easy to input, then this is directly affecting how can you find the products and potentially sell. And so it's impacting the marketplace business directly. Okay, so you touched upon a bit about AI and how you started thinking about it. But yeah, before we touch that topic with you, Alvaro, I would like now go back to Johnny and to discuss briefly what was your experience, Johnny, with integrating AI tools like Pixel and Thrifted. I know that AI is a very broad topic, and for those that don't have a background in it, it might sound scary. So, like in a way, I would like to understand how did you start thinking about AI? Did you read somewhere? Did you try to understand how it works? And how did the whole process from, let's say, from testing to integration look like?
Yeah, so I think our journey started about 14 months ago. Um,
Yeah,
Obviously, I was just looking for uh, sort of automation benefits. How can we automate our digitization process further? How can we speed up that process? Just as all our sort of input costs were going up, so just looking at how can we automate and speed things up, and it kind of led to obviously a conversation with you guys and sort of one or two others, and that was my kind of first, um, I guess, meeting with AI in a sort of work aspect beyond sort of using ChatGPT. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, it was a kind of a case of working together with Pixely and understanding what our output requirements were in terms of our website, as well as sort of the onward marketplaces. Because typically we push our products onto Shopify, which is our sort of hosting service first, and then from Shopify we then push across to our marketplaces. So I know some people work slightly differently and push
yeah,
across their website, their various marketplaces all at the same time, and then hold their sort of inventory, sort of management software somewhere else. Um, but yeah, so that was our kind of initial sort of meeting with AI, and it's kind of been a sort of 6 to 12 month process, I'd say. There's definitely some features that worked straight out the box, and we sort of immediately saw an impact on eBay just with um, some extra data on each product. And then between the sort of 6 to 12 month timeline, we saw a big improvement once we were able to kind of fine tune the various outputs that we needed in terms of the different bits of data. Um, so that was probably the bigger benefit is sort of over 12 months rather than immediate, I'd say.
yeah, yeah. And Johnny, maybe you can help, let's say, viewers in the audience, like if they are starting to integrate AI now, like how did you said you talked with us and a few other vendors. Can you explain like what was the process of, testing and evaluating and deciding what a vendor to go in and then, the integration process afterwards?
Yeah, I guess it was, there's a kind of cost benefit analysis really, where you're looking at how much time do we expect to save, um, because in our industry it's very kind of operator focused. Even in the factories where they're sorting the stuff, it's super hands on, just because you need someone to be able to tell what it is. And we're starting to see the tech, obviously, with AI that can tell you what it is rather than needing someone to do that. Um, and it's the same in our warehouse in the UK. Is that we need operators for all those different elements, for the laundry, for the photography, for the listing process. So I looked at, okay, what amount of operator time can I save by implicating this or sort of using this system? Um, and I think I've got some numbers somewhere. Let's have a quick look. Um, because usually, yeah, I'll try and do it from memory. Usually, our team can do about 60 items an hour, roughly. And now they've kind of gone up to about 120 sort of minimum. And that's with those sort of 20, 30 extra data points that are included as well. So it's a big value add once we sort of fully sort of utilize the system. Yeah.
Okay, okay, that sounds great. So basically, where you manage to double the amount of products that you can list in a time period.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah,
originally we were doing, I think, about 10 quite simple data points like size,
yeah.
color, etc. And now some of those have been taken over by Pixely. So now our operators are doing maybe 5, and then the other
Mhm.
15 to 25 are being done by the AI. So it's a big
Yeah.
improvement in terms of the amount of time the operator needs sort of inputting that like basic data.
Yeah, yeah, okay. That sounds really good. So basically, you managed to double, let's say, the number of products and boost your efficiency by 100% in a way.
Yeah,
For that time, not only that you're saving time, but you're also getting more data, and this more data is also valuable maybe for better, let's say, sales or engagement.
yeah,
Did you manage to measure like any value then besides the efficiency value that you clearly stated, that there is also value on the selling side in terms of the consumers shopping more or engaging with the products more?
yeah. I think our kind of biggest uh, kind of marker or number that's improved is how well we've done on marketplaces since basically. Um, we've had an eBay integration for years,
Yeah.
and typically our kind of inventory rides around sort of 40 to 50,000 items roughly. Um, and we had all of those items on eBay, and eBay was making up about, I think, about 2.5% of our sort of total revenue. Um, since building in the AI, and it's not just the AI, but AI's been a big part of it, adding those extra images and enriching the data as well. We've gone up close to between 15 and 20% of revenue now is coming from eBay.
Oh,
So we've seen a big improvement in terms of marketplace revenue because we've been able to actually really map our listing much better and fill it with all the data we need. Um, it's a little bit more complicated with the website understanding
yeah.
what the improvement has been. But definitely, there's an improvement in sort of internal search within the website, but it's more difficult to quantify when you've got other things like ads and SEO in play as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's amazing. So basically, went from around 3% to 15% increase of sales on eBay, and that's almost like 5x. And this is just by improving the data. So this is a direct implication and direct value gain from having more data associated with the products. Then your products can be found more easier, and this is in a way being able to sell better. That sounds really really great, Johnny. And I assume now you're selling more products than somebody who is not adding data there because your products pump up on
Yeah.
top of it. So yeah, okay, that's really great to hear in terms of metrics. So maybe we can go to Alvaro now and maybe talk a bit more about your experience with evaluating, thinking about AI, and implementing it in the marketplaces that you have worked in.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think potentially the best way to the best anecdote of implementing AI is what the work what we did at Depop. Um, but before we go there, I really like the question from Serena. I don't know if people in the audience wants to ask questions,
Yes.
because I think that one of the things I really enjoy working at eBay and Depot was the fact that we're trying to make the world a better place, and it sounds cheesy, but it is very important. And I think from the data that I've seen, this is already helping this whole trend of secondhand fashion. If you look at, for instance, retail sales over the last year versus last year, are is roughly slightly high, but roughly flat globally. And secondhand is growing, I think, 20% year over year, and tremendous growth over the previous year. So the rate of growth of second fashion is outpacing traditional retail by like 7 times. So I think this is a good outcome, and I think obviously AI can help this. Uh, just going back to your question, yeah. So in terms of the how we went about deciding how to use AI, we typically just look. We're a very tech companies are very obviously very data driven, and it's really about improving the buyer experience and driving incremental conversion and improving search conversion, um, and we basically had, it was a very somewhat complicated process what we went through, but we did a very extensive analysis looking at the quality of the data to start with. So we put together a sample set of, I believe it was 10,000 items, a mixture across all the categories in which Depop sells items. And we basically contacted what we identified were the top 7 companies, startups and more established companies, doing doing fashion AI and data tagging, and including some of the big players, as you might know. And one of the things that I found interesting is that the bigger players are actually not really good at this. um, and I think there's 2 reasons for it. One is they're potentially focused on different use cases that are potentially more important to them, like identifying, inappropriate images, and selling that technology to much bigger players. Um, uh, but there are so many interesting things in which computer vision and a generative AI could use that I think their offerings in fashion are actually not that great. That simply and we basically just did some precision recall, and I don't want to get too technical here, but some basic analysis of the quality of the data is given this picture, is the tag that was extracted correct, meaning is it precise? On given this picture, are tags that were extracted really relevant to that picture, and meaning recall, and have we extracted all the values? And because there's always a trade-off between precision and recall. And we identified that Pixar was kind of one of the on quality. I think it was top 2 for sure. And so, but I think what differentiated the Pixel was the depth of your anthology. So there were, even though another company could have been more precise, didn't have the depth of the anthology that Pixel had. So it had basically had more tags per category of items, whether it's shoes or dresses or any jewelry or any category. So that was initially what, from a qualitative perspective, who's the best at this. Then we took the top 3 uh, and did a performance and technical due diligence, and the fact that you guys have a very easy to integrate API uh, was very good point. And obviously the dashboards to be able to like track what's going on. So it was actually like no brainer integration, very easy to do. I think it took us a week to integrate with our systems. Um, and then finally, it was the cost and the scale, because a lot of these companies can do these things, but I think not everybody has figured out a cost-effective way of actually doing and processing what at the time was literally millions of items per day, uh, that Depot processes. So it was, and ultimately it became just similar to Johnny, a trade-off of cost and results. And the way we looked at that is trying to build the connection, because it's pretty obvious based on the metrics that we saw that it was improving the buyer experience. So the number of searches that return no results significantly dropped. uh, the average number of items per search increased significantly, which then allows us to do a better job at ranking items based on other dimensions. But ultimately, we're actually able to prove scientifically that it significantly increased the conversion rate and the actual incremental sales of the company on a proper A/B test. These A/B tests are really hard to do in marketplaces because you basically have to build copies of your supply and have half of your users experience something and half the users experience no tag data tagging versus data tagging, and fundamentally we're able to prove that it was much better from all the way end to end. But yeah, that was the analysis that we did.
Yeah, okay, that sounds really great. And I think it's also very, just to recap, so basically you did an extensive evaluation looking at the accuracy, but also looking at the richness of the tags. Also, Johnny mentioned this, they went from 10 to around 30 tags, which of course helps with search. So these 2 factors were very important for you. And then on the other side, you were looking at search, you were looking at, okay, what impact can this data have? And I think it's really I remember, we were doing like very extensive A/B tests, and the way that you did A/B tests for everybody in the audience that wants to measure the impact. So just to recap, you did a copy of the same products. So the same products, half of the viewers see with text, and then another group sees without the text, and this is how you can see the sales impact directly from the data. So I think this is really important, because we talk with a lot of clients and they're really wondering what would be the best setting for A/B test, so that you can directly measure this without thinking of all other sides. Like Johnny mentioned, there's impact on ads, there's other noise that can add to this, but showing the same products with different data, it's definitely a good way to measure this. And then Alvaro, I don't know, can you share a bit more in terms of the metrics that you saw, and in percentages, like not exact numbers, but at least in percentages, like what have you seen in terms of conversion rate growth or sales, or any other metrics that you measured throughout these tests?
Yeah, you put me in a spot because that was like a year and a half ago, but it was pretty significant, significant enough that if I remember correctly, the cost of tagging was 1/10 of the benefit. So it's basically what we pay for the tagging actually generate a 10x incremental net revenue to the company.
Okay.
And and I think that so I think what we did was actually more complicated than it needed to be, because the aspects A/B tests are great to kind of measure directionally whether something is better than something else. But sometimes you get caught on this idea that is the definitive answer. Whereas what you need to think about is the fact that the moment the long-term implications of what you're trying to do. Uh, Going back to my earlier point, the fact that users are trained to type very short queries, but then there is the long-term impact that the moment people realize that they can type, oh, if you're looking for people typically type Jimmy Choo shoes or red dress and then start scrolling. If then people can be trained to say, hey, red dress, short sleeve, uh, V-neck cut, and then get great result. I think that the long-term implications are not measured as part of the A/B test.
Yeah, yeah, great. Thanks, Alvaro. So maybe we can go quickly to Johnny now, like because Alvaro, you answered this question coming from Zorana. So maybe Johnny, you can also touch upon that. So I think Zorana is directly addressing the thrifted vision, and that we are all aware of the Swift environment, repercussions of fast fashion. So the question is like, can you share your view on how AI could help slow down fast fashion and make fashion more sustainable in the long run?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's exciting. First off, really, because obviously this is an industry I've got into, um, kind of largely because of its sort of positive impact that it's going to have in fashion. Um, I think one of the biggest gains is as Alvaro has been saying, is it makes it a lot easier for the consumer to find the stuff that they want. I think the majority of the stuff, or items or clothing or whatever, um, is going to be sold online, largely, and it's all about getting customers to be able to find those items and find exactly what they want. And I think the power of AI in enriching the data, and indeed there's some AI out there which allows AI search, or search powered, yeah, search powered by AI, which allows you which shows you products as you browse and shows you more of the things that you're looking for. When you have these huge marketplaces and you have millions of products, it's how can you actually show people the stuff they want? And I think that's probably the biggest gain, that I can see from AI on the retail side, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, great. And I think Alvaro also mentioned that with better data, recommendations are better, and this is what you're also talking about, Johnny. How can I find what I personally like, and then make it super fast so that I don't spend time to scroll down through pages and
Yeah.
and find it. I think we all have the same experience even on Google, where if it's not on the first page, you just give up. Or you refine the search, but the goal is to make the search so good that when you refine it, you at least get it on the first page. So it can that can definitely help. So we have around 5 minutes left, so I really want to wrap up with two final questions. So maybe Johnny, because we're talking with you now, what would be your recommendations, let's say, to viewers in the audience that are working either in brands and marketplaces, in terms of, okay, thinking about AI and how to become a bit more open and test and integrate.
Yeah, I think it's kind of just be aware of what's going on in the market. Obviously, LinkedIn's a great place to kind of understand what other people are doing and what companies, either competitors or uh, whoever, how they are interacting with AI, and that's probably the best way to kind of keep tabs on what's going on. Um, in terms of usage, I guess it really depends on sort of what level you're at, really, doesn't it? We're seeing a lot of more kind of consumer friendly type stuff, so that the individual seller, so the tech, as Alvaro was saying, behind Depop, and some of the marketplaces is starting to become really good. So it's for the benefit of the individual seller, which is great. So they almost don't have to see it; it's just going on in the background. I guess that's what I'm getting
Yeah.
at.
Yeah. So it's like almost the one click selling. You take a photo and then everything else
Yeah,
is
literally.
there. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Johnny. Alvaro, what would be your final tips for AI and thinking about e-commerce and marketplaces in general?
I mean, it's like do or die in my view. Uh, like if you're not using AI, you're at a tremendous disadvantage, and the pace at which AI is evolving is going to disrupt. I mean, not just fashion, everything. So to me, it's more like if you're not using AI, you're in big trouble. Sorry to say, to be dramatic about it, but think about Johnny, right? Like, if you can, instead of having four people do a job, I can do it with two, twice the quality, effectively. People, if your competitor's not using AI, then you're gonna win. Uh,
Yeah.
or if you're not using AI, you're gonna lose. And I think so. That's the kind of the dramatic side. But I guess I will also be excited about what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, the space is moving so fast, and and a lot of the stuff is being done open source by the big companies, where you know, like the latest LLMs that take billions of dollars to compute, then can be used, and then the bulk of the investment is done by the big companies. Yeah, I think fashion is going to be changed. I think the biggest opportunities, in my view, data tagging, generative AI, being able to generate descriptions, being able to take the picture of the item and see how that looks on you. Pretty soon it's going to be possible. Generating more pictures so people understand different ways of actually looking at the same thing or different backgrounds. Um, uh, but I think agents, it's going to be a big trend. I think being able to have an agent that's basically constantly, yeah, look for this thing for me, and then the background is like looking at what's happening out there. I mean, it's a very exciting future.
Yeah. I completely agree. I share the same opinion. I think it's really exciting, and instead of looking at it as a threat, we need to look at it as an opportunity for us to get better, and in general for the human race to get better. So yeah, so I think it's definitely positive. Okay, well, we are right on time. I want to thank both you, Alvaro and Johnny, for joining and for sharing your experience with integrating AI, and also sharing, the process and the path it took to get there, and also the results and the return of investment that you see by implementing AI. So thanks again, and for everyone in the audience, thanks for joining. It was really exciting hosting this webinar. In a month we'll have a new one, so keep following us. Bye.